Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Big Blonde and Beautiful, the podcast. If you're new here, my name's Karolina Howie, and each episode I pick a piece of media with fat representation in it, and I talk about the positive and the negative. This week, we're going to be talking about the Disney movie Heavyweight. So before we get into that, I'd like to introduce my guest for the week, Dr. Aubrey Hoffer.
Motherfucking heavyweights!
Which I'd never seen before.
Oh my god, how have you that is fat cinema.
I hadn't even heard of it. Truly.
What?
Really?
Oh my god.
I started the podcast and I was like specifically looking up like what media has fat representation in it, and that one came up and I was like, okay.
5 stars on Letterboxd. It is peaks fat cinema to me. I live and die by heavyweights. It has always been my dream. I'm too old now, but it was always my dream to remake Heavyweights, but just with a bunch of little fat girls. I guess I could still do it, but I would be, I don't know, I'd be the camp counselor.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Thank you for being here.
Hi, happy to be here.
So, Dr. Hoffer is a developmental psychologist who studies body image. She's also the co-host of the podcast Informed Attraction, a podcast about what the media tells you is hot, which I find very interesting. What inspired you to start that podcast?
Well, my co-host McKenna and I have been friends for years, and McKenna does a lot of work in media, and I obviously work in body image, and for a long time we've just had really interesting conversations about what is attractiveness, what does media tell you is attractive, where did some of these tropes around attractiveness come from, like, you know, right now we're recording a series about the big titty goth GF thing. Like, why the hell did that become a thing? Where did sexy bunny girls come from? I just wrapped up a 7-part series about attractive mascots, because also sometimes the Kool-Aid Man is hot, and that's all right.
Yeah, that is all right. And valid.
Yes. The Kool-Aid Man is bisexual.
1,000%. Absolutely. Literally, he's fluid. So he has to be fluid.
I love to. I post like takes like this on TikTok to promote the podcast, and I always know we found our audience when I'm like, yeah, Kool-Aid Man is bisexual, and someone in the comments is like, trans too, and I'm like, why not? Sure.
Yeah. I would have gone with non-binary, but sure, I could see either one. So you talk about, you know, body image in the media and like what's considered hot. So how would you describe your personal relationship with body image, and how has it like evolved throughout the years?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm a pretty typical case of studying my own diagnoses and neuroses. I really struggled with my appearance for many years, really struggled with disordered eating, unable to look at myself in the mirror, feeling horrible about myself because, God forbid, I exist in a fat body. And really just over time, as I was able to heal that relationship, I got really curious about where do these concepts even come from of how we think and feel about our bodies, and that's just my job now, is I do research in that area.
That sounds very interesting. That's awesome.
I love it. I think it's really cool. I do. Right now I'm working in an eating disorder lab, so my big project that I'm paid to be on right now is this longitudinal study where we're interested in the comorbidity between anxiety and eating disorder development. Basically, kids who have eating disorders tend to also have anxiety, but it's kind of an open question of which comes first. And the study that I'm paid to be on right now is trying to answer a little bit of that.
That's really cool. Yeah, which comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Right.
Stay tuned. So also when I was thinking about like what questions I wanted to ask you, this one popped up where like what are your thoughts on body positivity versus body neutrality? Because I know that in like the fat community there's a lot of, you know, conversations about which is healthier and better and all those types of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think we also have to consider that body positivity is a term that's really been co-opted by frankly, capitalism to be packaged and sold back to us. I think that that's happening less now that we're in the Ozempic era and everyone's fine shitting on fat people again. But like, I think I would say I'm more in the camp of body neutrality is probably going to be better for you in the long run. Like, when I think about my own relationship with body image, it was really transformative for me to go from like, I love my body, I'm so sexy, to let me just be ugly in peace. And that's like been the big transformation for me, where like I like right now I don't look how I usually look because it's Sunday. Fuck it, I decided let's just wake up and do a podcast. But
Listen, I understand that.
but there are times in my life where I was like, oh man, like how do I look in the mirror and just think I'm the sexiest person in the world? And I think for me and for a lot of people, when you're in that mentality, you're still orienting a lot of your time and energy around appearance and
Mm-hmm.
like being attractive. Whereas when you switch to what I would consider neutrality or acceptance, you're going more to a phase of like, yeah, fuck it, I rolled up to the podcast, just got out of bed, and that's fine. If somebody thinks I look ugly, I don't give a shit, because
Yeah.
I just don't care. I can't be bothered.
And yeah, that has to be very freeing, because like so much of our time and energy as women is focused on like trying to keep this beauty that is so unattainable. And yeah, it's just like not possible.
Well, and the standards will continue to shift, right? Because
Hmm.
I think thinness has been the prerequisite for a very long time. And I'm noticing, especially in the social media era that we live in, like, we just keep getting more and more specific beauty standards where it's
Hmm.
like, but what if you have hip dips? What if you've got apple chest? What if you've got donkey thigh? It's like, who cares? You just made that up. You just made that up. It's not a
Is
real
apple chest a
thing.
real thing?
I don't know.
Or
I feel like I've heard
okay.
something about apple torso or something lately,
Oh,
and I'm
for
like,
sure it's like the
I
shape of your body is apple. I'm like, why are we, huh?
I can't be bothered. I can't.
Yeah.
When people say shit like that to me, I'm like, none of these words are in the Bible. I don't care.
Literally, so I work with children, and one of the 9-year-old girls was like, "Oh my gosh, you have like circle lips." Like I would die for circle lips, and I'm like, "What even is that? I don't even know what that is." And she was like explaining it to me, and I looked it up later. And I was like, "Yeah, I do, but also like literally a month from now that's going to be like circle lips are the most ugly thing you could ever have." Like it's
Yeah.
constantly, it's just you can't keep up with it, especially in the age of like TikTok and social media. It changes like that. And so
Yeah.
you just like it's just a waste of time and energy, honestly. You picked the movie Heavyweights. Really quick, I'm going to give a synopsis for people like me who had never heard of it until I started this podcast. So, Gary is not looking forward to his summer vacation, since he'll be spending it at a camp for overweight boys in order to shed pounds. Fortunately, a kind couple, the Bushnicks, run the camp and make the process fun and relaxed. However, they're soon forced to declare bankruptcy and sell the camp to Tony Perkis, a fitness fanatic who turns the camp into a living nightmare of over-the-top training. But the kids plan to fight back. I just realized, is it Gary or Jerry?
Um. Let me see. I actually don't remember.
Because it's spelled Gerry. And I'm like, I think it's Gary, but maybe it's Jerry. We'll go with Gary, and if we're wrong, sorry.
It's all right.
Gary is what we're going with. So, yeah, what like prompted you to pick this movie?
I love this movie. I saw this movie probably on Disney Channel when I was 9 or 10 and just decided this was going to be my whole personality now. I love this movie. I think it was probably the first time in my life I had seen a movie that was about fat kids, and it's just objectively hilarious. I absolutely glommed onto it as a movie where weight loss is not the goal for any of these boys. In fact, it's like actually kind of like radical self-acceptance. And I just think that that is really cool. And I just think it's a hilarious movie. I love Ben Stiller. I think Ben Stiller is such a funny actor. I also think he's a great director and writer as well. And you can just see the influence that he had on this. Also, this was written by Judd Apatow. This is like one of Judd Apatow's first movies.
Did not know that.
I've said this before. I think Judd Apatow was a fat child, and I think it's because he wrote this movie that I'm like, Judd Apatow is fat coded.
Is fat coded.
Yes.
That's awesome.
I do think he might be fat phobic, but I think that it's because he's a former fat.
Sometimes the call comes from inside the house.
Everything about Judd Apatow to me screams this was somebody who was fat as a child and then thinned out in adolescence, but he never got over it.
I mean, it's a hard thing to like get over because people make it like your whole personality, even though you're like, hey, I'm like a whole human being outside of what my body looks like. So like, we focus on those things and they're like, no, you're fat. So that's what you are. And you're just like, awesome. Cool.
I'm like, just embrace it, brother. Just embrace it.
So this movie starts off, we see the main kid, Gary, he's walking home from school because he missed the bus. And he like, there's this kid with lemonade stand. He takes the whole jug of lemonade and just like downs it. Lemonade, lemonade. And then he enters his house to find a fat intervention happening, which is crazy. But I feel like it has to be a real thing that has happened.
I'm sure.
Fat penis are real.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's insane. You're like having an intervention about what your son's body looks like. And one thing that kills me is he tells his dad, he's like, you're fatter than me. Why don't you go to camp?
Gotta nip this thing in the bud.
I'm fine. This is a joke, right? You're fatter than I am. Why don't you go to the camp?
And it's true.
He's like, listen, if you're going to call me out, I'm going to call you out. And so he sees the video though, where it's like, we have this, what's it called? I don't even know. The thing where
it's like the big thing that they jump on. Yeah.
They call it like the blob or something.
Mm-hmm.
Which looks so much fun. Especially when you're fat kids and you like have all the weight to be like,
yes, you guys are gonna launch.
So we immediately start off with that. And then like he goes to the camp and we see him like start to bond with other fat kids, which this movie is very rare in the fact that they're like the majority of the cast is fat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, which is crazy. I mean, some of them I'd be like, why are you at fat camp? There were a couple of 90s. This is true. They were like, you're not heroin chic, so you gotta go to fat camp.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, awesome. Yeah, the 90s definitely play a huge role in media like this. How old were you in the 90s? You like grew up in the 90s.
I was born in 1996. So
gotcha.
I
was only 4 at the end of the 90s.
But I do think that the 90s diet culture landscape, that was what set the foundation for a lot of the diet culture media that I grew up with in the 2000s, right? Mm-hmm. Like the 90s, I think we had this big rise of stuff like Weight Watchers, Slim Fast, tons of like TV infomercials. There was the whole I think it was in the 90s where the term obesity epidemic got coined. Yeah. So just this sudden awareness of like fat is the worst thing that somebody could possibly be, along with this cultural rise of like the heroin chic aesthetic.
Mm-hmm. It really seems like a switch just like flipped for people. Like all of a sudden we had to police bodies Do you agree with that, or do you think that it was like a slowly coming to that conclusion?
I think that there's been anti-fat bias in US culture and media forever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least since like the early 20th century, and I think it's just been building, gradually toward what we have now, as, I mean, I think about like the book Fearing the Black Body by Sabrina
Mm-hmm.
Strings, and thinking about the ways where fatness used to be associated with whiteness, and that was when everyone was like, man, it's great that Americans are so fat. And then when fatness became to be more associated with blackness, then you start to have this cultural separation in the early 20th century where people are like, hold on a second, if you want to be a good white person, you need to get yourself as thin as possible. And we start to see that cultural shift.
AKA, everything in America is rooted in racism.
Always has been, baby.
Yup, absolutely. And so, yeah, yikes. This movie's from 1995. So these kids are like in the 90s when the whole like obesity epidemic thing is happening, which is when I wrote in my notes a timeline. Let me see if I can find it. Fat camps actually started in the 1950s and 1970s, the first like true fat camps. And then in the 80s and 90s was when it was like commercialized. And then like I feel like a lot of things in the 80s and 90s were commercialized, and this was not any exception. And then obviously our current time right now is the rise of Ozempic, and we're still in that whole idea of the obesity epidemic. But so fat camps had been a thing for a hot minute, and these kids are going to fat camp, but it's not like your normal fat camp. The Bushnicks, I wish we could have had them longer. They seem so nice. And so he's with all these fat kids, and it's kind of like, I feel like obviously gay conversion camps are like very traumatizing and like can be horrible, but also it's like you're with a bunch of gay people. So it weirdly like brings you community in an odd way, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure both at gay conversion camp and at fat camp, kids are fucking. There's gotta be, the sexual tension has to just be off the charts.
That's crazy. I don't know about this fat camp, but for sure other ones. Just because these boys are so young, but absolutely.
I think I'm saying mixed gender fat camps.
Oh, that's right. They're all boys in this one.
Kids had to be fucking. I think Camp Hope was much more of a this is for the boys type experience where there's just we're community, we're having fun, we're doing all this acceptance, and then Ben Stiller has to come in with vague Nazi energy.
Now it's time to meet your new owner and operator. Tony Perkins is a man who believes in you. His life is dedicated to saying things like, yes, and you better believe it. Entrepreneur, a motivator, and a new friend. May I introduce Tony Perkins?
Can you smell it? There's a life force in here tonight. Do you feel it? According to plan, we're gonna turn this summer into the #1 weight loss infomercial in the country.
You're kidding.
Kids, at age 12, I weighed 319 pounds. I had bad skin, low self-esteem, and no self-respect. Now, I eat success for breakfast with skim milk. Pounds are gonna fly, and fat is out of here, mister! And we are gonna do it together!
Oh my god. I don't even know if it's vague.
It's not vague, it's just explicit Nazi energy.
It's so like, obviously, ableist, fatphobic. I'm sure you're racist as well, because obviously fatphobia is rooted in racism. Ben Stiller's character is literally insane. Like, when I was first watching this movie, I was kind of on the fence about the positive versus negative representation, because on the one hand they do play into a lot of stereotypes of fat people. Like, the boys are very clumsy, some of them aren't, most of them aren't very good at sports, they're very like gluttonous. But then on the other hand, you have Ben Stiller, who's just this caricature of like the worst person ever.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to be like the fitness fanatic and get these boys whipped into shape, literally.
Mhm.
And it's like, I don't know, it's just the balance. What do you think?
Oh, I really do like overall the portrayal of heavyweights. I think that there are some things that I'm sure in a modern lens we can see as problematic, like especially when it comes to, and this is true of I think a lot of like camps, like the Native American appropriation type stuff.
Yeah.
But in general, I really think that the boys in the movie are portrayed as these like full complex characters, you know, not just being relegated to like the fat best friend. Like they all have
Mhm.
personalities and motivations and stuff that I think is really interesting and fun about them. And Ben Stiller's character is so unilaterally portrayed as villainous that I don't know. I think it works.
There's literally zero way to think of him in a positive light. He's
Exactly.
just so awful. And it's hilarious. And honestly, I feel like it's like this caricature, but also like I've seen some similar people like online, or it makes me think of oh my goodness, The Biggest Loser, like
Mm-hmm.
how just like horrible they are, and it's just they're insane. And Ben Stiller's character is insane.
Yeah, Tony Perkis is just unironically a lot of Instagram guys.
He is. He makes me think of like when guys are like, it's all in your head. You just
Yeah,
have to like think it and then it'll happen type of
yeah.
mentality. He's very much like, I can't. He gives me the ick so bad.
If you just lock in, you're not going to be fat anymore. But you just
Exactly.
have to
Yeah.
do the great lock in.
And yeah, and fatness has nothing to do with, genetics or the myriad of other things that could happen. It's just all in here.
It's just
Don't you
about
know?
grit.
Oh my gosh. He's so horrible. So when he first comes in, he has the boys weighed, and one of the things that stuck out to me was when I forget the name of the kid, but he gets weighed and he's like, "You're the fattest boy in camp," and they're all like, "Woo! You did it!" He just
Oh, my. Whoa. Congratulations, Mr. Sims. You are the fattest boy in camp.
All right, let's get it.
thank you. Like they're like, you're trying to fat shame us, but we're all fat here. Like you're the outlier. They literally make fun of the thin counselor in the beginning.
Here's another
Hey,
one.
Brody Butt. How was your year, chicken legs?
Not funny, okay, guys?
Really? Why are they teasing him?
That's a counselor named Tim. He used to be one of us, but then he lost weight. So we like to give him a hard time about it. He's cool, though.
Let's hear it.
Hey, Tim.
Come on.
What happened? Did you have a baby?
Yes, this is what I love about this movie is that I really do feel like it just challenges notions of anti-fatness, and at every turn these boys are like, nah, like we're chilling.
Yeah. We're not worried about it. We just want to go race go-karts and
Yeah.
jump on the blob. And honestly, valid. I also have a quote on here that I forgot to mention a minute ago with Tony. He literally says at one point, "Lunch has been canceled today due to lack of hustle."
Attention campers, lunch has been canceled today due to lack of hustle. Deal with it.
It makes me think of what we were just talking about with the whole like, it's all in your mind. You have to, but yeah. So they cheer for the fattest kid. They're like, "You're amazing! Congratulations, you did it," which is literally the complete opposite of the entire world. Well, at least America, anyway,
Mhm.
where it's like you're praised for being the thinnest. This movie kind of like turns society upside down. It's like, what would it look like if kids weren't fat shamed and that was actually okay and the normal?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, which is amazing because I did not grow up. No fat kid grew up in that atmosphere.
Yeah.
If
Well,
you
I think that's
did,
why the movie's also a fantasy for little fat kids who are watching it, because it's like, what if you had community with people who didn't think that your weight was the worst possible thing that you could
Mhm.
be?
Absolutely. And it also shows like what these kids, what we could be if we didn't have, fat phobia constantly rearing its ugly head and
Mhm.
telling us that the only way that we are valuable is if we lose weight. It's like,
Yeah.
what else could people be? Also, the whole like treasure trove of all of the candies and snacks and everything that they bring is crazy. They're like, guys, we have this down to a fine science.
I love the scene where the kid's got like the pepperoni strapped to his back.
Yes. And then they put it in the bedpost or whatever. I'm like,
Yes.
this is not their first rodeo.
I snuck in some Oreos for emergencies. That was very sneaky of you. Chipmunks, download now!
And the thing is, they probably didn't even have to hide it at that point. Obviously, when Tony comes in, they like ransack it and they, find everything and throw it out. But then they still find ways to get food. They're like, they have someone come in the woods and leave it in a stump. It's like, you're gonna find a way. Obviously, Tony is kind of just like a walking contradiction and a caricature that he's like, the fat man is going to tell me what's healthy, he says at one point. And he exposes the contradiction of diet culture where health is only validated by thinness and not like if you're actually healthy.
Yeah.
Which I find very interesting and true, because people can say, I'm just doing this to get healthy, or they're like, you would be so much happier if you were healthier, and I'm like, you mean thinner.
Yeah.
You don't mean healthier, because what if this is my peak health? You don't know. The only person who knows is me and maybe my doctor. Okay. But
yeah, I mean, even then, most primary care physicians have no training in nutrition or like weight sensitive care. So,
and they're also like, I've heard that in their schooling there are fat phobic like lessons that they learn.
yeah,
Like,
I
literally.
mean, healthcare professionals are some of the most fat phobic people, in part because their training is a lot of like training that medical professionals get is rooted in the belief that fatness is equated to ill health, which is just not true when you actually look at like empirical research on weight and health. But what do I know? I'm just somebody who does empirical research.
You're just someone who has a doctorate on in it. What do you know? Nothing. But what's interesting is the nurse in this movie actually is kind of like the opposite. She's like, this is really bad, we need
Yeah.
to report this. And shout out to Julie, she's a real one.
Yeah.
And then I also love that her and what's the name of the camp counselor?
He is. Let's see. Is he Pat?
I can't remember. Yes, Pat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love their little like romance storyline.
No, I know, it's just really sweet. Like I that's one that I always notice upon rewatches is like she just like likes him. And it's never a question of whether she likes him. It's just a question of whether he actually wants to go for it or not because of his own insecurities.
Yeah. And I think it also shows like, even though he's in this environment where his body type is the norm, he still has those insecurities from the outside of the camp. And obviously when you're constantly told like fat phobic things, it's really hard not to internalize them, which is why so many people, struggle with internalized fat phobia. But yeah, he just has to decide that he's worthy and of going for it. And he is. He's a great guy.
just appreciate them getting their little romance arc, and I think that it's really sweet. I mean, I just think it's really sweet. I really do think that this is a movie that is such a comfort movie to me because it has a lot of heart to it, where it just seems like every character is really written in a way that is thoughtful and sympathetic, with the exception of Tony Perkis, who is the worst, and he's the worst in a way that's just hilarious. Yeah.
I also think it's interesting. I remember what I was gonna say is that Lars, I guess you could say, is like the peak physical physique of like what people think women want, and she's like so turned off by his personality.
Yeah,
she's like, absolutely not. You're awful.
I mean, he is like Nazi coded, so
he definitely, like, Tony and him both are, but him, just because he German?
Yeah.
I think he has a German accent. It's like, on Parents' Day, one thing that did irk me was Gerald, like, this is right after they've, captured Tony. They've had this big blowout party where they just, like, did whatever they wanted, ate whatever they wanted, stayed up super late, and the camp counselor, Pat, he's like, we have to take our health into our own hands. And he shows that, like, he's not talking about we need to lose weight. He's like, we just need to be better versions of ourselves and figure out what that is and work towards that together as a community and, lifting each other up. And then when they have Parents' Day,
good morning! Now, who wants to tell us the lesson we learned here?
Don't put Twinkies on your pizza.
No. I think what we learned here is something about personal responsibility. From now on, each of us is going to be in charge of their own diets. We all have to learn some self-control. Isn't that right? Tim?
You got it. I'm ashamed of all of you.
Come on. We got to get healthy for ourselves. If we start respecting ourselves, no one can touch us. That's right. You heard me right. We're as good as anybody. And it's about time we started acting that way.
Gary's dad, despite the fact that his son is obviously more happy and just seems better, he's like, you didn't lose any weight. You still look bad. And it's like, you can't even see that your son is, like, happy and feels good about himself and is confident. You're just so focused on the physical transformation that you were promised. And it's just infuriating.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's how most people are, right? Because if you're like, I mean, I've had different times in my life where I'm really focused on, like, physical fitness for various reasons. And, like, there were times where I've been training for runs and people are like, oh, you're gonna lose so much weight, doing all that cardio. And it's like, well, unfortunately, the way my body is built, it turns out when I start running a lot, my legs just get super yoked. And I don't actually lose, like, any weight, but my legs just get fucking bulky. And that's fine. That's normal. Because they gotta get strong supporting my little fat body, and that's okay. But I don't know. I've had similar experiences where I feel like people are like, oh, you're doing all this exercise, but you're still fat. And it's like, yeah. Sometimes that happens.
It can definitely be frustrating. And it's just like, why can't you just be happy for your kid? And I also think that it shows sometimes the toxic way that parents talk about either their own bodies or their kids' bodies or eating habits. Like, that can really affect a child.
Yeah.
Like, the way,
Gary's dad is just like a self-hating fat guy. It's like, turns out, Gary's dad, what you needed was some radical self-acceptance.
For sure he did. And he doesn't, at least he's like, okay, this camp is bad. But that's only after Tony comes in and he's, like, literally gone insane. Well, I mean, more insane.
Yeah.
Than he already was. And then he, like, slams glass down and walks on it.
Now you realize what we've been dealing with. He has to be stopped.
Oh, stop me! May I? I'm too strong! I'm too motivated! And you're too weak!
I was like, what is happening? He's
He has to
showing
prove.
how mentally tough he is.
Yes.
I guess, to the parents. I'm like, you just look crazy. So yeah, it's just insane. And even though in this version of like fat camps they form a community, I did do some research on like actual fat camps, and most people have the same consensus that it was like psychologically very harmful.
Yeah.
And you know, it kind of, what's the word I want to use? It reinforces this idea of like eating disorders and like just all kinds of bad stuff. And unfortunately, those can have lifelong, you know, consequences, which is, I truly didn't think that fat camps were actually a thing until I kind of knew starting this podcast and stuff, like I had done more research on things, but I always thought it was just like a joke. It's not a joke.
It's not a joke. People love sending their kids somewhere to give them eating disorders to try to have a big weight loss transformation. I mean, I was a kid who was put into Weight Watchers at a young age. I'm sure if there had been an affordable fat camp near me, I probably would have been sent there. I'm sure I wanted to go there. There was a point where my mom, when I was like 13, wanted me to write to The Biggest Loser to see if they would consider letting me on. And it's like, Cheryl, I'm 13.
That's crazy. Oh my gosh. I'm thinking like I'm sure that my mom probably would have encouraged me also going to an affordable fat camp had it, you know, been available. Just cuz she, you know, I don't know about you, but my mother is fat as well, and she, you know, grew up with her mom telling her certain things, and then you just pass it down generation to generation, and it's like so hard to break.
I have a thin mom, so that it's a different dynamic. It's
Yeah.
It's a lot more, if I could do it, why can't you, baby?
Oh, that has to be so frustrating. Because you're like, my body's different than yours. Like, it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But the Biggest Loser at 13, that's kind of crazy. Did you watch the documentary?
I didn't. I'm Biggest Losered out. I mean, I've read enough about it. I know enough about it. I'm just like, what else is this documentary going to tell me that I don't know? Just
Nothing.
in the sense that it's horrible. So.
And honestly, they didn't even do that, really. They were like, you know, contestants are like, this was so damaging. And then it goes to like the producers, and they're like, oh, well.
But we made a lot of money.
Literally, and I'm like, okay, awesome. So you have zero regret for anything. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like, why did we make this documentary then? If you guys weren't gonna learn from anything, but
I feel like we're like within the next 2 years, we're gonna have another type of, maybe not explicitly a weight loss show, but some kind of like transformation show that's gonna be like, people are, we put people in an environment where they can be their best selves, and let's see what happens with the 90-day lock-in airing this summer on Fox.
Sounds like Mr. Beast coded or something.
I mean, like, I just feel like we're not that far from having a show like that.
I agree with you. I feel like it's been a hot minute since we've had a huge like transformation reality show. And with, you know, Ozempic being so popular and everything, and just like the current political climate, I think you're probably correct in assuming that will probably happen, unfortunately. And honestly, not great. Please don't do that, but it'll probably still happen. So at the end, I ask, do you think this movie is positive or negative? in fat representation? I'm gonna assume you
I mean,
say positive.
It's positive. I mean, I think somebody can make the argument where they're like, oh, but the premise inherently has issues, or there are jokes made at the expense of people's bodies in this movie. And I don't know. I feel like if I'm looking at the entire, like, every possible media depiction of a fat person in media ever, like we just did in Uninformed Attraction, a whole series about fat suits, and we talked about The Whale, which is a horrible movie. Like, if I'm comparing Heavyweight to The Whale in terms of good or bad representation, I'm gonna have to say it's on the good side.
Oh yeah, especially comparatively, I haven't seen The Whale because I'm like, I don't know if I'm in the mental space where I could watch that and like be okay. But I've seen, honestly, I haven't even seen clips of it. I've just seen pictures of him in the fat suit, and I'm like, that's enough for me. I don't need to see any more. And so, yeah, comparatively, definitely positive. I would also say it's positive because there's so many fat characters in this movie, which is so rare. It shows fat community. Like, for the boys, they're not worried about losing weight. Like, the only reason that they are there is because their parents are freaking out about them losing weight. And my only qualms is, which obviously, especially for the 90s, this movie's like crazy, like fat accepting.
Yeah. I love the scene where they are at the dance and like they've created this dance, Ben Stiller's character, to essentially humiliate these boys, and instead they start dancing with the girls and they're all super into it, and it's really sweet, and I just love that.
Just get out of here. We can't, man. They're guarding the door.
Yeah. Yeah. Get in here, man. All right, got it. Roy, yes. Come on, shake a leg. Let's go.
Maybe we should go out there. It's just dancing.
Okay, I guess I can stand a song.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, excuse me. May I have the pleasure of this dance? Yes, you may.
I don't know. I think like moments like that to me just push this movie into like, this is made with like intent of like positive messaging around bodies rather than with the intent of humiliation.
I agree with that. I do think it's intended to like, be more positive, be accepting of, who you are, what you look like. Like I was saying, my only qualm is I'm not a huge fan of like physical comedy, especially with fat people, because I feel like it's just like, okay, we get it. He's fat, he's clumsy. He's fat, he's bad at sports. Which that's just me personally. I don't find those things funny. But I mean, other than that, the movie's great. It only took me how many years to see it? 30? It's been out 30 years? Yeah, that's crazy.
I think when it comes to like fat physical comedy, like one of the first series I did on Informed Attraction, it was about the funny fat man trope, and I talk about actors like Roscoe Arbuckle and Chris Farley. And one thing that I think is interesting when it comes to physical comedy is that even if like the joke you're making is like, oh, this funny fat person is falling down, it takes a lot of physicality to like fall down successfully on stage or on screen. And I think I always appreciate physical comedy with fat actors because like in order to actually do this joke, you have to have a certain level of athleticism, and I think that's where I find appreciation in it, because it's like, oh, like this person actually has to be quite agile to do this. I think that like the fatty falls down trope is not as much of an example of what I'm talking about as much as like like Chris Farley in the famous SNL sketch where he's doing the Chippendales dance with Patrick Swayze. Like that's a sketch that works incredibly well because Chris Farley is really good at dancing.
I feel that sketch in particular though was like so damaging to like his mental health. And
Yeah.
also, I made a video about that on TikTok, and people were like, I actually find Chris Farley the hot one in this scenario.
Yes.
And I'm like, and period. And yep.
Yes.
I mean, I also love Patrick Swayze, but if I had to pick, it would be Chris Farley.
Yeah, Chris Farley, he looks so good in that sketch. And I mean, that's where I think that we can watch that sketch from a modern lens and it takes on a different meaning than it did in the 90s. Where I think in the 90s, it was very much like the joke is like he is fat. Whereas in a modern lens, like watching it and having a more like, I don't know, expansive view of attractiveness and like a more fat accepting views, like people can watch that sketch and really appreciate that, like, you know, this sketch only works because Chris Farley is good at dancing, because he's agile, because he looks good, frankly. It wouldn't work the same if he was like really bad or clumsy or awkward.
And it also, I feel like if this sketch was made now, it just wouldn't be taken the same way.
Yeah.
Like, it just, it wouldn't. I wish he could have, like, lived long enough to, you know, have seen the evolution of, you know, that sketch and many of his other things that people love him for. So overall, we'd say positive representation.
Yeah.
Especially for the 90s. Because literally, like, 5 years later, we have things like Shallow Hal, which I hate with all my being.
Good. Yeah.
I hate it so much. So yeah, and I think that is all for this episode. Do you want to plug, you know, your podcast and social medias or anything?
Yeah, if you're interested in following me anywhere, you can follow me specifically at, let me see, what's my fucking at? You can follow me on Instagram at hoff.phd, HOFF.phd. And if you want to follow the podcast, you can find us on Instagram at Informed Attraction. We're also on TikTok using the same handles. So if you want to follow us there, you can follow us there too.
Definitely go check that out, and I'll have all of that linked in the bio below, as well as this podcast socials and my personal socials. As always, please like, subscribe, follow, rate us 5 stars, all the things. This podcast is independently created. I literally do everything for it. So those things really help. And until next time, stay fat and fabulous. Bye.
Bye.